There are places on this planet where the ground does not stretch forward. It simply breaks off. Where taking one step too far does not mean stumbling, but vanishing. Vertigo is not only the fear of falling. It is the fear of losing control, the fear of making a mistake from which there is no return. That is why height unsettles us so deeply. It reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. We are not in control of everything. And yet, throughout history, some cultures have made a radical decision. They did not flee from this fragility, nor did they try to tame it. Instead, they chose to accept it. In these territories, entire families learned how to walk, work, and survive while suspended above the abyss. They chose to live where most would not even dare to look, places where there is no margin for error. Today, you will encounter 7 real cultures that built their homes, protected their dead, and defended their existence in places where height is not a backdrop, but a permanent condition. If stories like these resonate with you, subscribe to Chronoplanet and join us on this journey. Stay until the end, because the final culture in this exploration inhabits one of the most inaccessible environments ever documented. A place where living at great heights is not an aesthetic choice, but an extreme decision. And where you will discover that for them, the abyss is not what they fear most. To understand this, we will not rely on myths or legends. We begin with reality, a territory where survival does not depend on faith, but on knowing exactly where to place your feet. Here, the journey begins. Aït Atta, safeguarding life where no one can reach it. The landscape opens abruptly. After kilometers of arid plateaus and rocky valleys, the land tightens and rises into sheer walls that suddenly block all passage. We are in the southern High Atlas and the Jebel Sagro Massif in Morocco. Here, the land does not offer itself. It defends itself. Narrow gorges, rocky ridges, and deep ravines fracture the territory into passages that are difficult to control. From below, the slopes appear hostile. There are no obvious routes, no comfortable paths. And yet, someone chose to settle here. The Aït Atta did not build on the edge of the void by chance. They did so out of necessity. Atop hills, on rocky spurs, and at strategically inaccessible points, they raised fortified villages and agadiris, collective granaries protected by walls, towers, and controlled entrances. These were not simple storage spaces. They were the core of communal survival. Every location was designed to see earlier, endure longer, and protect what mattered most. Grain, seeds, documents, valuables, and reserves for times of drought were kept where access was never easy. Here, height was not a temporary challenge. It was a permanent strategy. Access routes were narrow, steep, and deliberately uncomfortable. Climbing required effort. Descending demanded constant attention. There were no railings, no added protections. From an early age, the body learned to read the slope, measure its weight, and move forward without room for distraction. That learning began young. Children grew up watching how these inclines were crossed, how supplies were carried, how animals or heavy sacks were guided upward without losing balance. Vertigo did not disappear. It was understood. And what is understood no longer dominates. But height protected more than food. It protected the community itself. For centuries, these elevated sites served as refuges from attacks, raids, and interclan conflict. Living above meant controlling access points, spotting movement from afar, and turning every attempted invasion into a disadvantage. The social organization of the Aït Atta was deeply bound to this defensive logic. Space, architecture, and strategy formed a single system. Nothing was built to impress. Everything was built to endure. The mountain was not occupied. It was negotiated. Today, many of these agadiris still stand, overlooking gorges and narrow passes that retain their ancestral silence. Others were abandoned due to migration and changing ways of life. Yet their presence continues to tell a clear story. Here, survival meant choosing the right place. Viewed from below, with structures etched into rock and access limited to a handful of near-impossible paths, it becomes evident that these are not simple settlements. They represent a deliberate use of height and inaccessibility as a shield. And the question remains suspended, as fragile as it is firm, among these heights. Would you trust your food, your safety, and your future to a place almost no one can reach? Keep watching. Because what comes next takes this relationship with height to an even more extreme realm. A place where not only life is protected, but where death itself was placed beyond the reach of the world. Tellem. Where even death defies the void. There are heights you do not choose for living. You choose them to remain. On the face of the Bandiagara Escarpment, far above any village that could be inhabited, small cavities appear, carved directly into the rock. They are not shelters. They are not viewpoints. They are not spaces meant for daily life. They are places where the Tellem placed their dead, beyond the reach of the world. From below, these caves look unreal. There is no obvious surface that explains how anyone could have reached them while carrying bodies, offerings, and ritual objects. And yet, they did. They did not bury their dead in the earth. They chose to raise them, suspending them on vertical walls where animals, enemies, and the ordinary passage of time could not reach them easily. The void became an absolute barrier, something that cannot be crossed, bargained with, or tamed. Inside these cavities, exceptionally well-preserved human remains have been found, alongside woven baskets, textile fragments, plant fiber ropes, and tools. The cliff's dry conditions acted as a natural preservative, slowing decay for centuries. These caves are not only tombs, they are time capsules. For the Tellem, death did not mark an immediate disappearance. It marked permanence, and that is where the greatest question emerges. Archaeological research has put forward cautious hypotheses. Removable wooden scaffolding, rope systems made from natural fibers, temporary supports anchored into the rock. But no explanation is fully conclusive. There are no clear traces of permanent structures, no visible evidence of stable roads. And that absence is not a mistake. It is part of the design. The evidence suggests the access itself was meant to be temporary. The path was not supposed to outlive the ritual. Once the bodies were placed, the physical link to the world of the living was erased. To protect the dead meant removing any possibility of return. The void became the guardian. Here, the cliff face was not only a physical limit, it was a symbolic border. Above, the realm of the ancestors. Below, the world of the living. Between them, the abyss as a necessary separation. Centuries later, when other people settled these lands, they found a vertical landscape seeded with silent presences, bodies placed where no human being seemed capable of reaching. That bewilderment passed from generation to generation, and it is still alive today. The caves remain there, watching from above, unchanged. they take no part in daily life. Their purpose is different. Here, the relationship with the void is not about producing, inhabiting, or defending. It is about something deeper, the human need to protect memory even after death. Placing the dead in the unreachable was not an act of fear. It was an act of control over time, a way to ensure that what mattered would not be lost, mixed, or touched. And before these suspended cavities, it becomes clear that for the Tellem, protecting memory mattered more than any bond with the world of the living. Because from this point on, Aït will no longer be a place of silence. At the next destination, the void will no longer guard motionless bodies. It will hold up daily life, work, and the survival of entire communities. Wanatwadi besatwari vabilad kwak, me chabaiki de tabokalokraiki au kwaglasis, wika at 3. Ifugao, growing food above the abyss. In this place, the void is not inhabited, it is worked. In the mountains of northern Philippines, the land offers no broad plains and no forgiving soil. It presents steep gradients, unstable slopes, and constant drops that force a clear choice: descend or reshape the mountain. The Ifugao chose the latter. Before them stretches a landscape that defies intuition. Tiered rice terraces stacked one above another, following the mountain's natural contour like living scars. From a distance, they look gentle. Up close, their true nature appears. Narrow, slick walls, nearly vertical, held in place without a single drop of cement. Each terrace draws a boundary. Beyond it, there is no field. There is a fall. Ifugao agricultural engineering does not rely on machinery or industrial structures. It is built from stone, earth, wood, and water, combined through knowledge passed down for centuries. The walls are reinforced by hand. Channels guide water from above and distribute it along the entire slope in a continuous flow. That detail changes everything. Water does not belong to one family. It descends through every level. If someone alters its course, the effect does not stay uphill. It spreads. A crack, a misjudged diversion, or a weakened wall puts everything below at risk. Here, the void is not defeated. It is balanced. Danger does not arrive in a sudden, dramatic instant. There is no single moment that triggers alarm. What exists is more demanding. A slow, cumulative risk. An edge that gives way in humidity. A channel that clogs. A foot set wrong on saturated mud. Working these terraces means walking the limit every day. Carrying tools, planting, harvesting, repairing. Always aware that mistakes do not always announce themselves. But there is an essential difference from other extreme environments. No one acts alone. The Ifugao system is collective by definition. If one terrace fails, the damage does not stop there. Water pulls the soil down, weakens the platforms below, and threatens the entire harvest. Maintenance is not an individual option. It is a shared obligation. Each family depends on how carefully the others care for their section. Here, the void does not divide. It forces cooperation. By contrast, modern industrial agriculture leans on heavy machinery, wide surfaces, and quick fixes. If something fails, it is replaced. If the soil is exhausted, it is abandoned. On the Ifugao terraces, none of that exists. There is no other plot. There is no margin for neglect. The mountain cannot be swapped out. That is why farming here is more than producing food. It is sustaining a precise balance between gravity, water, soil, and community. A fragile equilibrium renewed each day by human hands. When the rice grows and the terraces fill with water, the landscape becomes a suspended mirror. The beauty is real, but not decorative. It is the visible outcome of a system that works. Stay with it. From here on, the void changes roles. It stops holding up and starts protecting. 4. Qiang. Defending life from the edge of the abyss. Imagine standing in a place where height was never chosen to admire the view. You're in the mountains of present-day Sichuan. Here, the land does not open up, it fractures. Deep valleys, sharp ridges, constant drops. No wide plains, no easy routes. Only narrow passes, vertical walls, and slopes that turn every advance into a disadvantage. It was in this environment that the Qiang built settlements deliberately difficult to attack. Villages set on impossible inclines, where every access point could be monitored, and every invader's mistake came at a cost. The most recognizable element of this strategy is their stone defensive towers, some rising several stories high, built right on the edge of the void. They are not simple watchtowers. They are control points, refuges, and symbols of resistance. From them, the entire valley could be controlled. They could watch movement below. They could buy time. But living in these towers was not an occasional act. Sleeping, storing food, gathering, watching. All of it took place within vertical structures, with narrow stairways and stacked levels. Here, defense was not a separate task. It shaped everyday life. Yet this balance faced an enemy no one could foresee: earthquakes. In this region, the ground does not always remain still. And when it moves, the void stops being static. The towers, built from dry stone and flexible geometries, absorbed part of the motion. Even so, every tremor was a reminder that danger does not always come from outside. Choosing these heights meant accepting a double risk: human attack and the unpredictable force of nature. That is why Qiang isolation was not a consequence. It was a strategic decision. Living far from main routes, in places difficult to reach, reduced external threats. Disconnection became protection. The more inaccessible the site, the lower the chance of conquest. Compared to modern defensive systems, walls, technology, electronic surveillance, the contrast is clear. Today, we try to neutralize danger at a distance. The Qiang, instead, turned their environment into defense. There was no separation between architecture, geography, and strategy. Everything belonged to the same system. You might be wondering, was living here protection, or also a form of confinement? That question marks a turning point in this journey. Before moving toward even subtler and more treacherous territories, it is worth pausing for a moment. If this journey is surprising you, subscribe to Chronoplanet and continue exploring with us. From this point on, danger will no longer be obvious. It will not rise in towers or hide behind walls. It will conceal itself. We now enter territories that deceive, and voids that do not impress, but never forgive. The 5. Honey. In the void you cannot see. Here, the void does not present itself as an obvious threat. There are no vertical walls that demand immediate respect. No hanging balconies, no abrupt breaks in the ground that force you to stop. Here, danger does not announce itself. In the mountains of southern China, the Hani homeland remains covered by a persistent fog. It does not lift or disperse easily. It stays. It wraps the valleys, clings to the slopes, and erases the visual references we normally rely on to orient ourselves. Humidity saturates everything: the air, the soil, the vegetation. Even the sense of time seems to shift beneath this constant haze. The ground rarely dries out completely. From afar, the slopes look gentle, green, almost welcoming. But that appearance is deceptive. Under the fog, the terrain breaks into continuous drops that only reveal themselves as you walk. Each step uncovers a different angle, an uncertain foothold, a surface that offers no guarantees. In this setting lies one of the most complex and ancient agricultural systems on Earth: the Hani terraces. Tiered across extreme hillsides, they descend along the mountain's natural contour as if they were part of its anatomy. They do not impose themselves on the relief. They adapt to it. Each terrace depends on the one above and supports the one below, forming a living system in which water, soil, and gravity must remain in constant balance. Water descends from the heights through carefully regulated channels, distributed precisely between levels. If one section fails, the impact does not stop there, it spreads. There are no monumental walls drawing clear boundaries, no obvious line separating stable ground from the fall. Here, the void does not show itself. It disguises itself. It hides in edges covered with wet grass, in mud that seems solid until it gives way, in stone that appears when you do not expect it, and disappears when you need it most. The paths that connect the terraces are not fixed. They change. They warp with rain, erode over time, and reshape themselves with every season. To work here is to move across surfaces that are never final. Each day alters the ground. Each storm rearranges the points of support. Risk does not arrive all at once. There is no dramatic instant that triggers an alarm, no clear moment of absolute danger. What exists is accumulation. A foot placed slightly wrong, an edge weakened by weeks of moisture, a wall that yields millimeter by millimeter. Tiny mistakes that, on these slopes, leave no room for correction. Climate is decisive. Long rains saturate the earth until it becomes unstable. Fog reduces visibility to a few meters, erasing depth and reference points. Cold and damp affect materials, the human body, and the stability of the entire agricultural system. Here, the void does not intimidate. It penalizes even the smallest lapse. That is why Hani life is not built on strength or visible bravery. It rests on something far less obvious and far more demanding: constant attention. No one walks fast, nothing is improvised. Every route is memorized. Every step is taken while weighing angle, load, and footing. This knowledge is not written down. It is transmitted by watching, repeating, and correcting, generation after generation. Survival depends not on a heroic act, but on thousands of small decisions made well, day after day. Unlike other extreme environments where danger is immediately recognizable, here, beauty deceives. Water mirrors the sky. Green appears continuous and stable. Fog softens the landscape until it becomes almost hypnotic. Yet beneath that apparent harmony, the boundary between balance and falling is fragile. This is a kind of void that does not cause instant vertigo. It does not quicken the pulse. It does not trigger an inner alarm. It simply waits. And when someone grows careless, it acts without warning. For the Hani, living here does not mean defying the mountain or imposing themselves upon it. It means reading it every day, understanding its smallest signals, accepting that the environment is not mastered. It is interpreted, respected, and constantly negotiated. Here, survival is not an open fight against nature. It is a silent conversation with it. And before this seemingly serene landscape, an uncomfortable truth emerges. Sometimes, what is most dangerous is not the abyss you can see, but the ground that looks safe. Because there are places where the void stops being a threat and becomes part of daily life. And that is where we are heading now. 6. Naxi. Making the abyss ordinary. Here, the abyss does not break in as a threat. It accompanies. In the mountains of Yunnan, the land rarely offers a stable surface. Naxi villages are scattered across steep slopes where the ground drops, tilts, or breaks off without warning. There are no massive walls and no monumental terraces dominating the incline. There is constant adaptation. Homes rest on the terrain as it is. Some sit on irregular platforms, others step downward with the mountain. They do not try to impose order on the landscape, they fit into it. The result is a web of houses, paths, and uneven ground, where the void is always close, yet never foregrounded. What is most revealing is not the architecture, it is daily life. Children playing a few meters from abrupt drops. Families moving along narrow paths without stopping to measure every step. Older people carrying firewood or food along routes that would demand intense focus from any visitor. There are no gestures of defiance here, no dramatizing of risk, only routine. From childhood, the Naxi learn to move on uneven ground. They are not taught to ignore danger, but to live alongside it. Balance is not explained in words. It is passed on by example. Watching where you place your foot, feeling your body's weight, learning when to advance and when to stop. The void becomes everyday scenery. It does not trigger constant vertigo because it is never framed as exceptional. It is there when you go to fetch water, when you visit a neighbor, when you return home at the end of the day. That does not erase risk. It absorbs it into life. In contrast to modern living, where we try to eliminate any chance of falling through railings, flat surfaces, and strict rules, here people accept that the environment will not be softened. It is the body that must learn. Contemporary overprotection reduces exposure to danger, but it also breaks the direct relationship between movement and space. Fear appears when that relationship is lost, when the body stops reading the terrain and relies only on external systems. Among the Naxi, that connection stays alive. The void is neither challenged nor glorified. It is respected without becoming an obsession. Here, the abyss does not define every gesture, but it is never absent. It is not a constant act of bravery. It is simply the place where you are born, grow, and grow old. And in the face of this normalization of risk, one doubt hangs in the air. Perhaps the fear of the void is not innate, but learned. After seeing how some cultures learn to live alongside the abyss, one final story remains, the most extreme. The one we announced at the beginning. A place where you do not live near the abyss, but inside it. Houses suspended on vertical walls with no escape routes, no margin for error. It was not a temporary solution. It was a conscious decision. And what is most unsettling is not how they did it, but why. Get ready. We are entering the most inaccessible territory of this documentary, where the void stops being a challenge and becomes home. Ancestral 7. Ancestral Puebloans. Turning the void into a home. Here, the void is no longer a response to the environment. It is a fully conscious decision. In the southwest of what is now the United States, the land breaks into deep canyons and rock walls, carved over millennia by wind and water. A harsh, dry landscape. And yet, on some of these cliffs, dozens of meters above the ground, structures appear that defy immediate logic. Complete dwellings built into vertical alcoves. They are not temporary shelters or isolated ceremonial spaces. They were built for living. The ancestral Puebloans built entire communities suspended beneath natural overhangs, using rock ledges that offered something crucial for survival: permanent shade, thermal stability, and protection from the desert's extreme climate. The cliff itself worked as roof and shield, moderating temperatures year-round and reducing exposure to searing sun and sudden storms. Carefully fitted stone walls defined interconnected rooms, storage spaces, communal areas, and ritual zones. Nothing was improvised. The orientation of the dwellings captured winter sunlight and avoided direct summer heat. Space was limited, yet arranged with absolute precision. Here, living at height did more than protect. It demanded planning. Dry corn was stored for long seasons. Every resource mattered. Water, scarce and vital, was managed with extreme care. Height imposed a daily discipline with no margin for waste or error. Everything was designed for life. Everything was placed where access is neither obvious nor easy. From below, these homes look unreachable. There are no visible roads and no permanent trails. Access depended on wooden ladders and minimal footholds, elements that could be removed when necessary. In that way, the void did not surround the home. It protected it. But that protection came at a price. Living here meant accepting there was no quick exit, that in the face of fire, collapse, or human error, the window for reaction was minimal, that every entry and every departure carried the same risk. And yet, life flourished. Entire families lived suspended above the canyon. They cooked and stored food for entire seasons. They raised children who learned to move at height before they could even understand the danger. Daily rituals unfolded with the abyss open beneath their feet, and the sky as the only wide space. The void became a definitive border. It separated the community from the outside, from conflict, from threat. But it also separated them from the world as we know it. Protection and confinement at once. This was not a brief or desperate choice. These communities remained for generations. They knew the rock, the climate, the sun's path, and the limits of the environment with absolute precision. They knew exactly how far they could go. And then, something changed. These settlements were abandoned. The dwellings were left intact. The walls remained standing. There are no clear signs of violent destruction, no evidence of a sudden flight. Possible explanations speak of prolonged droughts, severe climate shifts, resource depletion, or profound social change. But there is no single answer, no definitive one, no closed conclusion. The only unquestionable fact is this: those who had accepted living inside the void chose to leave. This journey ends here, not because the planet has stopped offering extreme territories, but because we have already observed what matters most. Along the way, the void was never a single backdrop. It worked as a border, a shield, a productive space, and in some cases, a home. In none of those contexts was risk accidental. These cultures developed precise knowledge of terrain, climate, materials, and the limits of the human body. Their safety did not depend on external barriers or instant correction systems, but on a direct relationship with the environment. constant attention, memory of place, and decisions calibrated to each situation. By contrast, contemporary society has pushed risk outside everyday experience. It contains it, labels it, outsources it. That model reduces immediate exposure, but it also weakens our ability to respond when control fails. By integrating risk into daily life, these communities preserved something that is becoming increasingly rare: autonomy in relation to the environment. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with us. Write the keyword void in the comments so we know you traveled this journey all the way to the end. Because this documentary isn't just watched, it's crossed. And now we want your perspective. After everything you've seen, which culture impacted you the most? And why? Do their choices feel impossible to understand? Or do you think they preserved knowledge we've left behind? If you're not part of the channel yet, you can subscribe to Chronoplanet to keep exploring with us. Every week, we document real stories of extreme territories, human cultures, and adaptive choices that challenge how we understand the world. Remember, not all progress is about mastering the environment. Sometimes it's about learning to read it. See you in the next exploration.